Hey, how are you doing? You holding up all right with all of this COVID-19 coronavirus stuff? It's been a weird week, right? This has been on my mind. I'm sure it's been on all of your minds as well. I don't really know what to do with it. I've gone through a bunch of phases with the thing where I'm like, well, I'm going to analyze all of the details. And I think if I look at this data and what this scientist says, I can figure out and project how this is going to affect the world and the economy and people's. And I have no idea. I'm not an expert in any of those things. And after I don't know, a couple weeks of processing all of that, I think last night I finally kind of hit the wall of futility. And it occurred to me that I'm just not smart enough. I don't have enough information to really think about the big meta picture. And then if you're not thinking about the big meta picture, and maybe your experience has been like this too, then you go down to the little micro picture, which is me. It's my immediate circle. Like, what happens if I get this? What happens if somebody I really love gets this thing? What happens if my parents get this? What happens if my wife gets this? Like, what would it feel like? And I feel some anxiety about that as well. And then you listen to other people and, they urge calm and they say, look, one way or another, this thing is going to go for this long and have this kind of an effect. And what we need to try to do is, what's the language they're using? We need to try to flatten out the curve so that, we take sensible precautions and it doesn't spike all at once and tax the medical system. I'm like, all right, that makes sense. I'm kind of tracking with that. And then all the cancellations start coming, which I guess really does make sense in keeping with all of this. I don't know. I've heard intelligent people make a case for business as usual, but I think I'm tracking a little bit more with the people who are saying, let's just be safe, shut things down, give each other just a little bit more space, see what we can do about getting this under control and again, flattening out that curve. But there I go again. I'm talking about stuff that, all I can do is repeat. I can't offer any unique insight into that at all. So I've gamed out the macro stuff a lot. I'm guessing you have too. I've gamed out the local stuff a lot. What happens if this happens to me and people I love? And I suppose I've taken that about as far as I wanted to take it as well. And then last night, I'm talking with my family about this. And, I'm speculating about this and being the dad. My kids are there, my wife and my parents. And I'm going on and on with all of these theories. And my wife, who's far more socially intuitive than me, notices that my middle kid, my daughter, is doing the thing where she balls up and kind of hugs her knees, and she was upset. And, so I kind of tried to temper it all a little bit. But the reality is that my stupid, inaccurate speculation really only served to cause stress to those kids. And, my wife and I talked about it, and that was really helpful to hear as well. It was a good check on me in terms of what I do with all of this. But in the midst of that conversation, my oldest daughter, she is 13 now. That's so crazy to say. But she's like, well, Dad, I trust God. And I'm ashamed to say the thing that I'm going to say next, but I'm going to say it anyway. My first response was, that's so sweet. I'm glad somebody said that, and I'm glad she has that. And I moved past that pretty quickly. And in that instant, I went from, no, that's not so sweet. That's not something to be patronized. That's brilliant. That's my kid having exactly the right perspective. She wasn't arguing with me that we shouldn't do things that are smart or be careful. I'd explained some of that stuff and she was tracking, but she was just not freaked out. And the reason is not, I think, because of some misplaced faith that magically God will just do something miraculous. I mean, if there's a God, God can do miraculous things. That would work, I suppose. But it was more of just this incredibly wise beyond her years, old soul mindset of this long view and of an attitude of patience and trust and peace. And it wasn't just in her words, it was in the way she said it. And it was almost like she knew that I needed that maybe I was getting a little bit worked up. And I don't know, it's one of the first times that my daughter has ministered to me in a very overt, meaningful, spiritual way. And so since then, I've just been thinking about that. Okay, well, what's the Christian side of this? What do I do with this thing? My wife reiterated my daughter's points, and she's right too. And I think there are a few obvious practical things that just as Christians we can do and we can be, or as people who are sympathetic to the teachings of Jesus, or as people who reject all of that but are just people of goodwill and want to do things that are good. And so I've thought about that a little bit, and here's my short list. 3 of them come in the form of a list. The rest are going to come in the form of a Bible passage I want to read to you. Here's what I think I can do as a Christian, and here's what I want to try to do in response to the coronavirus situation we're dealing with. 1, I'm not smart enough, I'm not studied enough to know what is the right behavior on my own, but there are people who I trust, who God has blessed with great brains, who've done a lot of homework. And if they're saying that these simple measures that they're recommending are what I ought to do to be thoughtful about other people and the state of the world, if this is a way that I can serve my neighbor, if this is a way that I can even invisibly show the love and grace of Christ to other people by just changing some of my habits and listening to people smarter than me giving me good advice, then I'm going to do that. I think that is not just socially smart. I think it's Christ-like to do that for other people. And you know what? If they're wrong, they're wrong, but I don't have any reason to believe that the advice that I've heard is good advice. And so one of the things that I want to do as a Christian to respond to this thing is try to follow good advice in an effort to think beyond myself to help other people. The second thing that I want to try to get right is only repeat things that I know are true. And now I'm thumbing back in my brain through all the stuff we just talked about. I think I only said things that I know to be true, but this is hard. People are saying all kinds of stuff. And this is a pity about the moment we live in, but this is why we kind of need to bank trust with each other in good times. We haven't done that for a long time. I understand I haven't always helped with that either. I understand I'm complicit in this thing that we've gotten ourselves into as well. But that whole social fabric thing that you hear people talk about, the most important thread that runs through it is just simply trust. That even if we don't like what somebody else says, that we believe what somebody else says. But we've kind of traded that out for using our words to get power and get ahead and get the things we want and maybe even to lash out at other people. And so I think we do have a bit of a problem in that, well, the church has not always earned everyone's trust in the last 20 or 30 years or so, especially in the last 10. The media has not really earned people's trust. I don't know if they're telling the truth about things or not. It's very hard to tell. Governments haven't really done the best job of that. And as good as it might feel for you and me to say, yeah, those institutions are all bad, my friends, those institutions are us. They're us. They reflect back to us who we are. They're representative of us. They're voted for by us. They're built from the ground up by us as we attend and participate and lend our voices to it. And so the fourth place where trust is eroded is just between you and me. We've allowed trust to not be banked between us and our neighbors. And because of that, now we're in a time where we could really use it with each other. And, well, we don't maybe have as much stockpiled as we'd like. So here's something that you can do. Here's something that I can do and that I'm going to try to do. And that is, I want to say things that are true. And if I don't know that things are true, I want to not say those things, even if I think they might be true. And I want to give other people the benefit of the doubt in their motives. It is always so tempting right now in, frankly, a somewhat toxic time in the history of our conversation to want to blame people and get after people and assume that people are dishonest or idiots. And I renounce that. I can't be doing that right now, and I can't be doing that after this whole thing is cleared up either. I can't think about people that way. I can't talk about people that way. I've got to give other people the benefit of the doubt while still being thoughtful about the words that they say and what they're doing as well. So stuff I can do as a Christian. I can listen to really smart people and try to do things that are supposed to help. Cool. Another thing I can do as a Christian is I can do a better job of the whole trust and truth thing and just make absolutely sure that I don't repeat things that I don't know to be true and that I'm brave about things that I do know to be true. A third thing that I can do is not give in to the temptation to weaponize a situation for the benefit of my tribe or my group or my people, or to say, I told you so to people who I disagree with or don't like. That isn't how things work as Christians. You got that language from Jesus. The disciples are like, "Hey, how many times should we forgive? Like seven times seven? Like, how, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of forgiveness." And Jesus metaphorically is like, just keep forgiving, just keep giving it away. Jesus has that parable about the guy who gets forgiven a massive debt, but he can't forgive a tiny debt that somebody else owes him. And it's such an obviously ugly look. And the take home of all of these teachings of Jesus on forgiveness is that we don't really do the "I told you so" thing if we're a part of his kingdom and if we're trying to imitate what he's about. Instead, we do the forgiveness and patience and grace thing. And that isn't just for naughty behavior, it's for ideas and words and the fact that other people are going to be wrong about stuff. So that's something I can do better, and that I want to be a part of my "How do I respond to the coronavirus as a Christian" plan as well. Pretty much all the rest of my plan, as I was reading through scripture today, is found in Romans 12. So I'm just going to read Romans 12. This is going to be kind of a wall of Bible right here, but just consider all of this stuff in light of what we're dealing with, in light of the pressures we're feeling, in light of the ways that I think we're going to feel tempted to view each other as something less than our sisters and brothers, our neighbors, our friends. There's language in this that talks about how you think about your enemy or your perceived enemy. There's language in this about what to do with each other in all circumstances. And you don't need a bunch of commentary from me, so I'm going to read it. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to wish you well. And I'm going to follow this up with a video about the Septuagint later on, because I want to keep learning about the Bible and investing in the stuff we've been investing in together. But for now, let me read you Romans 12, and maybe you can take some notes from this, as I do as well, on how to round out our list of how we might respond to this whole virus situation that we're dealing with. Here we go. Romans 12, starting in verse 1. "Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Don't conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, don't think of yourselves more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourselves with sober judgment, in accordance with the measure of faith God's given you. Just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members don't all have the same function, so in Christ we who are many from one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. If a man's gift is prophesying, let him use it in proportion to his faith. If it's serving, let him serve. If it's teaching, let him teach. If it's encouraging, let him encourage. If it's contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. If it's leadership, let him govern diligently. If it's showing mercy, let him do it cheerfully. Love must be sincere. Hate what's evil. Cling to what's good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and don't curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Don't be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Don't be conceited. Don't repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what's right in the eyes of everybody. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Don't take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it's written, it's mine to avenge. I'll repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy's hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you'll heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. I said I wasn't going to say anything after that, but I'm totally going to say something after that. I read this book in seminary by a sociologist. I don't think the guy's a Christian. Maybe he is. His name was Stark, not Tony Stark. Rodney Stark was his name. And the book is called The Rise of Christianity, or Rise of Early Christianity. And there's a whole chapter in there about how Christians responded to the plagues that would come and go generationally through Rome. And he gathered all this data, and I don't have the book here, but in doing so, he made this great case for Christians being changed by the values of Christ, the values of his kingdom, These Christians then, they couldn't help but function differently when crazy stuff went down. And they would hang in the fight and they would serve people. It didn't make any sense for them to serve, and they would show care where it didn't make any sense. And it wasn't really beneficial for them to show care. And Stark makes the case, I think, as kind of an outside observer, that the way Christians acted under pressure was a game changer for not just how people perceived Christianity, but in a way, they were salt and light. They were a preservative for the Roman world, for the Greco-Roman world at that time. And so even in suffering, what we see historically and what we see from a text like this is there's opportunity to do stuff that is enormously redemptive and that points to the things that as a Christian you believe are the truest and realest ever in an opportunity like this or in a moment like this that isn't present in normal, mundane, everyday times, in calm times. And yeah, I want to try to emulate that impulse from the Christians who came before you and me as well. Think on that Romans 12 thing. I'm going to try to do the same. I'm going to see what I can do about internalizing all of this stuff and responding in a way that is in keeping with what I say I theoretically actually believe in facing a difficult situation. One way or another, this is temporary. I don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know what it's going to look like. But there's an opportunity to demonstrate the grace of God, the love of God, care and compassion, and maybe even to reset some of the stuff that's broken and weird about our moment in history by how we handle our business right now. That's compelling to me. It's challenging to me. I've been thinking about it a little bit. Thanks for indulging me and letting me share my thoughts with you. Hang in. I'll check in soon. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour. Catch you in a bit.